Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for listening today. And we are so excited to be joined by Ash Shah, a longtime member of our Yext Innovator community. Hi, Ash. Welcome.
Thank you, Lauren. Great to be here, everybody.
And could you tell us a little bit more about your role and expertise just to set the scene?
Absolutely. My role's always been focused on scaling customer acquisitions to drive growth. I've been always looking at modernizing customer journeys, the platforms that they go to, especially now, it's so important with the AI first world. I've helped various companies in the past to architect revenue engines that really help strategize different strategies that converts into measurable revenues. I guess my biggest piece today to talk about is in the AI world. I want to talk about more about owning that discoverability and the journey, turning trust signals to brand, and most importantly, driving acquisitions that actually help lower retentions. So that's who I am.
Awesome. Well, perfect expertise for what we're talking about today. I want to start by saying, since we're focused on this Yext 2026 consumer search behavior report findings, in reading the report, is there something that stood out to you before I start calling out signals? What was your big takeaway?
Absolutely. First thing, thank you so much, Yext, for putting this together. I think this is the topic of the town, right? Uh, when I was really looking through those reports and looking at statistical data, there were a few things really stood out. Now we all know there's AI adoptions with different brands, right? But the story is not really about AI adoption. It's a story about AI driven revenue,
Right.
right? We've seen how consumer behavior is changing. We've seen how growth leaders have been trying to pay a lot more attention to AI and things of those nature. I think the bigger thing that I want to point out of this things that really stood out to me, a handful of stuff basically is we as marketers always worried about attribution, and channels like AI always influence your revenue and your engagements, but it's really hard to attribute towards which channels are really driving those value for us, because at the
Right.
end of the day, the citations really do not add as a tangible influence to the attributions. The other thing which really caught my attention is the high income customers, right? It talks about how high income customers have been adopting to AI more faster. If you look at history, which is very interesting, is most digital disruptions always start with the younger demographics. It's very
Hmm.
different, which brings me to a very interesting point saying, when you have high income consumers who are really worried about their time, who are really worried about their value, and and are really trying to find that efficiency, you have to be very cautious on how those premium brands are going to have that AI discoverability.
Hmm.
That's absolutely very important. Over here, I feel like the purchasing power is actually moving much faster than just the cool element of, wow, this is great, let's get on it. So really interesting stories out there, and there were some really things that really bogged my mind out. One last thing I will talk about this point is, um, AI is just not about discoverability. I've been using that word for the past few minutes here, but it's AI is all around the whole journey, right
Yeah.
from the discovery all the way to conversions. I've seen folks where they have actually said, "Hey, what's the best product in the market for this?" But then they've also gone down saying, "Hey, compare this product A to product B," and that's a really bottom of the funnel
Yeah.
query or questions, and it really influences for that product discoveries and influencing towards the conversions on a product.
Well, thank you. I can tell you read the report because that was one of our big findings, right? Is that you might think AI is used at the beginning of the journey and then people use traditional platforms for purchase, or vice versa. Maybe you think everybody still discovers things on social media or Google, and then they get really in depth talking back and forth with an AI. That's not true. It's one node in a, very, very complex interwoven journey. However, I still want to zoom. I'm going to zoom out just a little bit and say, though, 71%, I think, of people are using AI more than a year ago. And I think globally, almost half, 42.7%, use it for local search regularly, as in the past month. So, wherever in the funnel that's happening, are you seeing that in your traffic data or in the work that you do? Does that shift feel like, yep, that's right, I think that's happening, or is it not? Have you not fully caught up there yet?
No, that's a brilliant question. I will start by saying that algorithms and AI engines have changed or are changing every single minute as we are talking.
Hmm.
It's very unbelievable that Google's gone through so many algorithm changes in the past approximately 5 months that it has not
Right.
gone through the 5 years, right? And that's all because of AI. It wants to promote AI, it wants to look at data differently, it wants consumers to interact differently. And you're right, we are seeing a lot of these things in our data, but we are basically seeing a fragmentation of discoveries, right?
Right.
At a very high level, you're spot on, which is consumers really arrive with your brands or your websites now after they've interacted with multiple different sources, right? They don't just come in like, oh, I found a brand, go to the website, XYZ, right? So consumer behavior and AI algorithms have been updating all of these. And consumer has always looked for one thing, no matter what they've searched for. And that word is, or that is basically answers. If
Mm-hmm.
you can get the answers to them in front of them, they are going to love you. They're going to like you. And that's what exactly AI engines are doing today, which Google's moving on. Back in the days, Google used to show you those blue links. Now it's showing you AI answers. It used to
Mm-hmm.
do zero links. Now it's also doing the same thing with AI answers. So I think the bigger thing which we are trying to address, or at least the way I look at it as an industry expert, is it is not about really the AI in terms of what kind of traffic AI is sending to you. It's how
Right.
much AI is actually influencing you before the customer converts or the consumer converts as a customer, right? And more or less in our data, we've seen a lot of things that we get footfalls. We've used different tools, obviously, to understand what are those different prompts people put in. How do we
Mm-hmm.
get our discovery out there? What kind of citations do we get today? We've even used server log data to help us understand how many times those AI bots are coming to us, how many times those pages are being visited. It really helps weave the whole answers and strategies together that allows us to focus, saying that, hey, this is how we should be prompting our content, this is how we should be doing our content, how should we be preparing towards our firsthand experience data and things of those nature. So yes, we're seeing a lot of that things. We are shaping our discoveries based on those data sets. We're shaping our strategies based on that data sets. And more critically, you're spot on. One of the things in the report also talked about how AI is still that discovery level, right? I mean, it's basically that layer that allows you to discover, but that's a tipping point or a starting point towards
Yeah.
that whole journey holistically.
Teeing up my next question perfectly, honestly. So, yes, of course, we've talked about AI happening through the funnel, but it is still very important in discovery. And as we like to say, nowadays, visibility is table stakes, right? You talked about structuring your content, doing those best practices to be included in an AI answer set. But something really interesting about the research is that 95% of people, after they get an AI answer, go on to take an additional verification step, right? So they get that local business recommendation, but they don't just move from, okay, this is a great running shoe for, somebody who's starting out with a 5K. Let me click purchase. They go and do a variety of other things. So those actions include, still searching on Google, going to a brand's website directly, reading reviews about the product, looking them up on social. So, what do you make of that behavior pattern? And then, more tangibly, what are you then telling, clients or brands or people you work with to do because of that?
That's a great thing, Lauren. I should have mentioned this earlier in my earlier question. I think this is a very interesting find, and I think it's changing every single day. But it's a very interesting find because it rephrases or reframes AI as a recommendation engine. I
Mm-hmm.
think we as humans are always always looking for verification and validations, right? Even
Yeah,
with the word of mouth, when somebody recommends you a brand, the first thing you do is go to Google, search for the brand, look for
right.
its website or social, right? And that's exactly the role of AI. Like you go to AI and say, hey, I want to look for an X type of product in that category. I think it's going to make some recommendations, but the next human psychology is like, hey, let me go check out their social media. Let me go look at their reviews. Let me look at
Right.
their websites. It's really to validate that credibility and look at the brand experience they're going to offer. Like I'll give you one example. One of the things that I did with one of my clients back in the day, it was a lifestyle brand, right? And very interestingly is when you put something out there on AI, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
let's say as a consumer, you're putting, hey, I want to look at a really nice product for, and I'm just taking this example because that's my lifestyle brand, for your makeup, right?
Right.
Just hypothetically putting out there. And there's a brand out there. The next thing the person's going to do is go to TikTok or YouTube and look at those videos about how it influences the person and what is that they're going to offer. It's a very modern buying behavior where they really want to look at that social media for validation, go to Google and validate the credibility, understand the product's usages and their use cases that allows them to build that trust. The biggest part of all this umbrella as of today is reviews. And I know we haven't really talked about it, but Reviews are those trust signals today, and it's always been a trust signals back in the days, but now it's even more important for AI because AI is relying on real consumer reviews and reputation to influence those brands and make those recommendations as an engine.
Yes, exactly. I mean, we've seen that, star ratings, review recency, and word of mouth in the survey rank as top three purchase influencers, I think, after an AI recommendation. So, are you doing anything or giving any other different tangible advice, to brands or clients about what they should do because of that? What are the best reviews practices in the age of AI as you see it in your work?
No, it's a fantastic way to put it. And it's a perfect segue to my next point is,
Mhm.
you know, and I want to start by saying this, which is reviews have always been initially a part or always been a part of customer service or
Of
reputation
course.
management, right?
Yeah.
It's changed. That has changed in the past couple years. And I'll tell you why. Reviews are now called the core acquisition assets.
Hmm.
They are what defines your brand. That is so important for AI. Like in a very different world, I'm going to say this that if you look at reviews as a conversion function, you
Hmm.
will understand how those reviews are then picked up by AI, analyzed by AI, not only for what is in that content, but also for the tone and the culture and the content the brand's putting it out there, ideally known as sentiments, to actually put it on as AI search results to allow users to understand what brand they're dealing with. Because all consumers want today is not a product, but also a brand experience. Because if something goes wrong with that product, they are well assured that brand's going to take care of me.
Right.
So I think that's very important. I do want to highlight you kind of nailed up a whole lot of stuff out here, but when you look at reviews recencies, review velocities, sentiment trends, consistency of reviews, and review ratings across different platforms, all signal to AI and now even to Google's algorithm, which is based on EEAT framework, that this brand is credible and has real trust signals. And
Yes.
I think one thing I'll quickly add up here is I also feel like how you respond to those reviews are very important. Like one thing internally that we had tried to reinforce with, again, the brands that I've worked with is how do we use reviews as first party growth assets,
Hmm.
right? Now, yeah, I can go to 1,000 or 1,000,000 customers and say, hey, go write me a review. Absolutely, they're going to put their sentiments out there, but how do we validate and put forward content that's really important for AI engines to work around? I'll give an example.
Hmm.
We all know reviews influence discovery, consideration, conversions, and the full funnel influence, right? We all know that story. And it is absolutely important that when you respond to those reviews, that is also now captured by AI about how you're responding to those reviews.
Right.
And that becomes a content that AI is consuming today to actually look at your brand. So if the consumer put in A, B, C, D, like, hey, I love this brand, and it has been a great brand and it has taken care of me of ABC or whatever that is. Responding to those review is not like, wait a minute, hey, thank you for your review, we appreciate it. No, go right up saying, hey, we're so glad you're here. We were happy to support you in this. We have this product. Besides this product, here's some other products that you could buy as well that would be really helpful for you to nurture of ABC. That now content that you just responded back to those reviews is taken by AI, and AI is consuming that information as how you're not only doing customer service, but proactive customer service to support somebody and co-editing products in a category that allows you to win the race against the competitors. So that ratings or optimizing for ratings, which has been always there, has to now change to optimizing to sentiments, optimizing to consistency, and optimizing to the credibility. I've always said this before, a 5-star reputation is more valuable than a first page ranking on Google today.
Wow. I love that. That's a great quote. And yeah, it's fascinating because it's so true. All of these things that go into, your reputation and reviews management, they matter to being cited and described in AI. They matter to being evaluated by customers, as we see in our research. It just really matters across the board. So you're right. People have always looked at reviews, but the way that it's being looked at by Google's algorithm, by AI tools, and by people themselves in their nonlinear verification journey is really fascinating and something that
So
brands really need a strategy for. If you are like a many location brand, managing your reviews across that many locations, that many platforms becomes complicated. So Yeah, it's a big task.
Absolutely. And Yext has been a great partner. I want to add it up there that we've been using X for a while now. And uh, the we have multiple locations, over 6,000, let's put it that way. And it's been really helpful for us to validate that and then actually look at sentiment analysis through Yext. I think the bigger part, one thing I'll add up as well is response to reviews also becomes very important. The time to
Mhm.
respond. I think I didn't touch that upon, but one of the recent Google analysis that I was doing, it made me feel that when you respond to Google reviews in a shorter period of time, it actually allows the customers to know that you've been very prompt and very, very caring for your customers. And
Right.
Facebook had been implemented that, or Facebook did implement this a few months ago or a year ago, if I recall correctly, where they actually tell you how quickly is this buyer, if you sell it on the marketplace, is going to respond to you. And Google's
Mhm.
picked it up now as well on Google reviews. So if you respond to reviews as quickly as possible, whether it's an AI based or whether it is a human, that number, say, responding in less than an hour, responding in less than 30 minutes, responding in less than 15 minutes, really adds a whole lot of value when it comes to the AI engines as well.
So yeah, in closing, I want to think beyond the survey a little bit and just ask you two final questions that are forward-looking. The first is about giving some advice. So if there were another marketing leader who was just beginning to think about how to take AI beyond just visibility, visibility is table stakes, now we're going to take action. What advice or best practices would you have for them?
Absolutely. I think the world has changed, and in my 20 years of career so far, I have never seen a drift in this change so fast and pacing really fast ever. And it's very interesting to see how quickly we have to adopt as marketers. I think my piece of advice to fellow marketers and somebody who's really trying to evaluate AI to move forward is don't treat AI as SEO. I
Mhm.
always say SEO is a very abused word, but that's the way I just put it. I think you need to start treating AI as a trust project. It is all about getting your recommendations, citations confidentially, understanding both the AI and consumers, and putting content out there, which is really first-hand experience that is really hard to replicate, making a shift from syntax to semantics, strong reputation signals, very deep subject knowledge experts, build the authority and trust, which are the new growth engines for winning today's digital slash search world, right? It's way bigger than SEO. It's way bigger than anything else, and it's most closely aligned to the customers. I think it's very important as marketers you understand that AI is going to change. I've said this in my past communications that what we live in today is just generative AI.
Yeah,
GEO, as it's called, right? We're not too far from predictive AI. Once the predictive AI comes in, this is the foundation you will need for predictive AI to have your
right.
firsthand experiences, right? Literally shifting your brains from keywords to intent, like as it's called. Google's already moving that direction. Google's algorithm changes around EAT and then now EEAT, which the extra E in the front is now actually experience and
Yeah.
not expertise, right? And a lot of those changes have shaped marketers' world a little differently, where they really want to focus on that experience that leaves or creates a foundation for the new upcoming AI engines, which will be more predictive or predictive AI engines that will allow users intent to be addressed. So that's kind of my advice. And obviously, things are changing. So it's very important to keep up to date on what's happening, what's not, what's the human behavior, what's the consumer behavior,
Yeah.
and how to allocate it through different channels.
Absolutely. And finally, I mean, maybe you answered this a bit, but what are you most focused on over the next 6 to 12 months?
That's a great question. I guess I am always running behind what's changing around the world. So, long story short, I think I'm really focused right now on looking at what is that change that's happening? What does this change mean for the next approximately 2 to 3 years? How is predictive AI going to change? What is structured data, authoritative firsthand experiences mean for us today? How do we need to shape it up? What's that strong digital presence comprising of? What is that next competitive advantage in the marketing that we want? Is it really the trust? I believe it is. So how do I optimize for that trust and not for the traffic? I don't want 1,000 people coming to my site just for visiting me. I want 100 people who are going to buy from me, right? And I
Right.
think that's only possible with the trust. And this is the foundation that I'm trying to build with companies where I could really drive customer acquisitions where customers really want to go and interact with a brand that has really strong trust signals, authority signals, and more importantly, a review and reputation that it can actually be trusted by consumers and customers. And my last focus right now really is to and I say this, which is very crazy because I never said this or I never used to say this before. Um, Almost about 8 years ago, I used to say, "Hey, get your content for your customers." But now I'm going to say, get your content for your customers and AI engines because
Yeah,
they need to understand your content. They need to understand what you're talking about, and they need to understand what your data is all about for them to actually put it for our customers on that platform in a more digestible manner. So that's
absolutely.
where
Content for people and machines. Absolutely. Well,
people and
thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ashley. So appreciate you joining us. And thank you to everyone for watching.
go ahead. Thank you, Lauren, for having me here. I'm really, really obliged.